Okay, stimulus checks, tariff rebates. You're hearing all this talk that President Trump wants to send out $2,000 to the American people. And I'm going to show you, I want to show you this clip and we're going to talk a little bit about it. And I'm going to show you a series of different clips in the future where we just talk about this because the reality is when it comes to a tariff rebate or a stimulus check, $2,000 stimulus check, this would be very hard to do, and there are a variety of different reasons why it would be very hard to do. But I want you to hear from some of the experts talking about this because we've been here before. We've heard the talk of dividend checks from Doge, which we've never heard anything else after. They talked about it for a couple of months and then it went away. And now you don't even hear about Doge anymore. Where's the waste, fraud, and abuse when it came to all that savings that they were bringing in? What happened to it? And so this could be a very similar situation. So I'm going to play a clip and we'll talk a little bit about it. Here we go.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that money would likely be given to families making less than $100,000 a year. Reagan, do you think?
So, and this is $100,000, less than $100,000 a year. That's who would qualify for this. And so not everyone would qualify. And you do have middle-class people making over $100,000. And so, and there's still some of these people making over 100,000, believe it or not, are still living paycheck to paycheck just because things are so expensive. If you own a house, just rent in some areas is really expensive. And so making a cutoff of 100,000, that is going to cut out some people who realistically could use the money.
This is a good way to provide additional financial help to Americans. And how long do you think it will be if this does happen that people will see this money in their bank account?
Well, first, I just want to say that this affordability crisis is nothing new. This is the exact same problem that Joe Biden and his administration had to face. And it was something that was one of the final nails in the coffin for President Biden and his presidential campaign. President Trump and his administration is now facing the same reality that you can say the economy is doing great and you can be making progress. But if Americans don't feel like their grocery prices are going down, then you're going to have a problem. And it's hard to convince the American people that what they're feeling isn't true. And so I think these checks.
And I wouldn't even say it's hard to convince. You can't convince people that are going to grocery stores every week paying more. You can't convince them that things are good. Okay, you can talk about, oh, well, the stock market's doing well. Your 401k is doing well. That is not going to convince people because they know we're all experts at how much things cost because we pay for things every day. And so this is not something that you're going to be able to convince people. And I would agree with her when she was talking about Joe Biden. Yes, Joe Biden, the economy was actually, you have to understand where we came from. So we were in a pandemic. We came out of that pandemic. We saw inflation, and it wasn't just inflation in the U.S. It was inflation all over the world. There was a variety of different reasons for that, supply chain and all that. But we saw that inflation. And then people, when the economy started to get back on track, and I would say in 2023, 2024, it was too late at that point. And Joe Biden was trying to convince the American people that things were getting better, but the American people still felt the crunch. They were going and they were spending all this money at grocery stores. They were spending all this money on everything, gas prices, all this stuff. And so it was very hard at that point to convince the American people that things were getting better, even though when we were looking at the numbers, and I looked at the CPI every month, so we're looking at inflation every month, we saw that inflation was coming down, and we saw inflation dip below 3%, but people weren't feeling that. And when it comes to the cost of items, they didn't come down that fast. Even though we saw inflation across the board come down, when it came to groceries and things like that, the prices were still elevated. And so this is going to be a very hard task for President Trump. And remember, President Trump ran on affordability. He ran on bringing the cost of items down. And now that we're almost a year into his presidency and prices haven't come down, people are looking at that and they're saying, you made a promise. You said it would be easy. You said you'd do it right away. We're almost a year in, and prices are starting to go back up. And so that it's going to be really, really hard for Trump to figure out a plan here. And just giving out a $2,000 stimulus check, that is not going to help. And just the logistics of doing that, the money is not there.
Right here is just another option for the Trump administration to try to convince the American people that they are helping them, that they are making progress on the economy. And now we see a CNN report that President Trump is considering going around the country and doing a tour on affordability and the economy. That's very similar to what we saw President Biden do in his Bidenomics tour. It's a very similar crisis. And I think all the options the administration can deploy can work to their favor to try to provide some sort of a relief to the American people that they haven't felt in years.
Okay, so there's a little more insight when it comes to this $2,000 stimulus check. And you hear that President Trump wants to go on he wants to go around the U.S. and talk about affordability. But will this work? And all I've heard from President Trump lately is he's saying that the cost of items are going down. And this whole affordability crisis, this is a hoax. This is Democrats just creating this. This isn't real. And so that's what I hear him talking about. So if he goes around the U.S. and he talks like that, it's going to upset a lot of people because they're going to look at this and say, look, he's out of touch. He has no idea that the cost of items have increased since he's been president. He's not accepting that responsibility. He's not trying to help us in this situation. And then to go even a step further when it comes to this $2,000 stimulus check that you're hearing, the tariff rebates. First off, the only reason that you would be getting a tariff rebate is because you're paying more as a result of tariffs. That's why they're talking about sending these rebates. Because understand, the American people, the American companies are paying this tariff. Some of these companies are passing that cost on to the consumer, and so that means you are paying more as a result of tariffs. It's not the other countries that are sending these products to us that are paying these tariffs. It's us. And so initially, when President Trump was out there talking about tariffs, and even to this day, he's still saying that it's the foreign countries. That's who's hurting. We're hurting the foreign countries by these tariffs. No, we're hurting U.S. companies that are buying products from foreign countries. That's who we're hurting. They're the ones that are paying this tax. They're the ones that are paying this tariff, and then it's passed on to the consumer. And so in essence, we're paying more right now, and as a result of paying more, now you're hearing this current administration say, well, we're going to give you guys a $2,000 rebate as a result of that. But there's a problem. They're estimating the tariff revenue that's coming in to be around $200 billion, maybe $250 billion. That's what they're going to be able to collect in revenue. If you're talking about a $2,000 stimulus check going out to people making $100,000 or less, we're talking about $400 billion. So already, if we're looking at this situation with the tariff revenue coming in, you're going to have to borrow even more money to provide a stimulus check. When one of the reasons or the main reason why they wanted to collect this money in tariffs is they wanted to pay down our national debt. You can't pay down the national debt if you only have $250 billion and you're talking about sending out $2,000 stimulus checks in the amount of about $400 billion. That's how much it would cost. So you're going to have to borrow $150 billion. Let's say it's $250 billion is what you can collect in revenue. You're going to have to borrow another $150 billion just to pay out these stimulus checks. And that doesn't even touch our debt. And so this is a huge problem. And President Trump kind of stepped into this. And I remember listening to the Rope Line interview, and this is on the lawn of the White House, where you had a reporter ask President Trump, you're bringing in all this money in tariff revenue. Why not, have you considered sending out some type of stimulus check to the American people, some type of rebate to the American people? And it seemed like President Trump heard that for the first time, his response, because he was like, oh, yeah, you know what? That would be a good idea. Yeah, I think we could do something like that. We could send out some type of a rebate to the American people because we're bringing in all of this money. But the big problem is you don't have enough to send out a rebate check to the American people. But once you put that out there, once the president puts that out there and says $2,000 stimulus check to the American people are going to remember that. And they're going to hold him accountable for that. Even though he's not running for president again, they're going to hold the party accountable for that. They're going to hold Congress. So you have midterm elections in 2026. Some Congress people are going to have to answer that question. What happened to the stimulus checks? What happened to the $2,000 stimulus checks that were promised? Because ultimately, Doesn't matter what the president's saying about stimulus checks. Ultimately, Congress has to weigh in on this because Congress, they carry the money. They have the purse. And so they're going to have to rule on this. And if they never take this up, then it's something that the president said about stimulus checks that is going to impact people in Congress. So I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.